Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's really great to see so many of you coming along. My name's Louisa. I'm Chief Exec here at Spinal Research, and my colleagues, if you'd like to introduce yourselves quickly.
Good
Sure.
evening. Hi. So,
So,
hi, my name is Cynthia, and I'm the research portfolio manager at Spinal Research. I recently joined in the summer, and I've been really busy since then. I'm really excited to be on board. And over to you, Harvey.
All right. I'm Harvey Sahota. I'm the Chief Vision Officer here at Spinal Research. I've been with the organization for 4 years and I've been a supporter prior to that for a decade. Had a spinal cord injury back in 2009 and have been involved in lots and lots of different types of research programs and initiatives over the years.
thank you. So, we've invited you to come along this evening. We really hope that this is going to be an interesting, useful session. We wanted to celebrate what we've achieved in 2024, give us the chance to tell you a bit about some of the work that your support is making possible, and also give all of you the chance to ask us some questions. Just a couple of housekeeping points on the Q&A side. When we do get to the Q&A section, towards in about 20 minutes, half an hour, we'll be addressing some of the questions that you've already submitted in advance, but you'll also be able to add questions live as we go. So there should be a Q&A button if you look on the screen, and you can just submit questions through that and we'll be able to see them. We'll try our absolute best to get to as many of those as possible in the time that we have this evening, but if we don't get to you for any reason, please do email in. We always love to hear from you. You can either find us on social media channels or email us on info@spinal-research.org. There's also probably a real mix of people here tonight, so some very science focused, others maybe not so much. So we'll try to keep our questions and answers as accessible as possible so that everyone can stay on board with some of the language that we're using. So, as I said, this is really a chance for us to celebrate the year, and I wanted to start off by thanking all of you for your interest in and support of our work. We just wouldn't be able to take the steps that we are taking towards our mission to cure paralysis without you. So, you really should take a huge amount of pride in what you're helping us to achieve. We've had some fantastic fundraising highlights this year. We had a record number of runners in the London Marathon in April. We had 184 brave or crazy people who took to the streets, and they helped us raise nearly £500,000. We had our annual race day at Wetherby Racecourse in October. It was the biggest and best that we've had in years. And so, again, a wonderful group of volunteers and attendees helped us raise over £50,000. We also recently have been in the news as well because of a Cycle for Caroline that was happening with a group of equestrian riders cycling from Scotland down to London, raising money in memory of one of their sisters. And that's done brilliantly. It's raised over £300,000, and obviously we're really thrilled about that. We also had a busy year internally. We launched our new website, we've changed our brand colours, and we did all of that work internally. So we're really pleased with how that's going too. And then also very excitingly, we were able to host a screening of the documentary Superman about the life of our late patron Christopher Reeve, which Warner Brothers very kindly gifted us the chance to do that. So that was a great chance to get some of our supporters together back in October. So really, all of these things are honestly only possible because of you guys. And I just wanted to say again, I can't stress enough how grateful we are for everything that you do, whether that is running a marathon or buying Christmas cards or just coming along to an evening like this. We really couldn't do what we do without you. So to talk a little bit more about what we do, I'm going to be having a little chat with Harvey and Cynthia and asking them some questions and giving them the chance to elaborate a little bit on our work. So we'll be doing that now for about 20 minutes. And then, as I said, there'll be a chance for you to ask some questions after that. So Cynthia, obviously we work internationally. We've got partners all over the world. It would be really great if you could talk a little bit about how we do maximise our impact in the field of spinal cord injury research with our partnerships and collaboration across the world.
Thanks, Louisa. So, every year since 1998, the spinal research meetings have provided an opportunity for leading experts in the field of spinal research. To come over from all over the world to come together to one place to share ideas, outcomes, and foster collaboration. And this network meeting has developed considerably over the years, by We've been started to include more PhD students, postdocs, and also a range of scientists from specialist fields such as robotics and rehabilitation as well. And so, most recently, we're actually, advancing so quickly towards clinical trials, and naturally, our attendees have increasingly included clinical specialists by bringing the patient's perspective to research. The network meeting is also considered a key event in the calendars of our spinal cord injury researchers and clinicians because, as I mentioned, it's such a fantastic opportunity for them all to come together in one place to foster new collaborations and to spur on discussions and hence contributing progress in our knowledge and basically advancing science at such a greater speed as well. So at this recent meeting, which we just had, it was in September, it was also my first time at this meeting. We actually hosted over, I think, 120 of the world's leading scientists all in one place. And there was one PhD student, Daniel, from the University of Birmingham. He presented a really good poster, and that portrayed, some of the PhD work that we're currently funding him. And he's been exploring low blood pressure and the health of blood vessels in the brain in individuals having spinal cord injury. So most recently, actually, our supporters might have recently seen in the social media post something about Daniel and a bit about his work as well. And on the other hand, with support from the Rugby Football Union Injured Players Funds, we have recently this year launched the UK Spark Network. Spark, which represents the theme Spinal Cord Injuries Research Collaborative, as an aim to increase and basically improve clinical research by connecting together academic researchers and NHS clinicians with each other, and then eventually developing a UK clinical trials network. Also, furthering on about our other partnerships, we've partnered up with the Reeve Foundation. So as our supporters might be aware, Christopher Reeves was a close friend of spinal research, and this close connection lives on through his son, Matthew, who's our trustee and board member of the Spinal Research. And Spinal Research is also a partner charity with the Christopher and Dana Reeves Foundation, which is based in the US. And so both organizations share the same mission in that curing paralysis. And we're currently working very closely together through jointly funded research initiatives and programs as well. And interestingly, we are actually currently funding 4 translational or preclinical projects, which are now, some of them are coming to an end. So our supporters might be quite interested in keeping an eye on this. And so we have a bit more being announced on what the outcomes from these projects are in the next few months or so. And these projects are based in Canada, which actually further cements our outlook to global funding and harnessing the international power of science and research as well. And so just for interest for our supporters as well, as of today, we have 11 projects that we are currently funding. They're underway. 6 are in the translational stage, and 5 are in the clinical stage as well. And so these projects are funded by the Christopher and Dana Reeves Foundation and also the RFU, the Rugby Football Union Injured Players Funds. And our projects that we fund range from spinal cord stimulation, cell therapies, biomaterials, drugs, and also the next generation rehabilitative approaches. So that's basically it.
Thank you. Harvey, another big area of focus for us over the last 12 months has been establishing the SCI Ventures Fund. Could you talk a little bit about that, who the key players are and what we hope to achieve with it?
Yeah, absolutely, Louisa. Thank you. So SCI Ventures has probably been one of our biggest programs over the last few years, and it's taken a lot of work to get it off the ground with a lot of players. Essentially, the problem that it's trying to solve is to attract more venture funding into the space of spinal cord injury. So we know that research cannot really be translated into clinic without there being industry partners involved. And of course, that's a very different type of money that's required to make that happen. So we came up with an idea with the Reef Foundation, our partners, a few years ago to establish something called SCI Ventures, which would be a venture fund, which is purely and wholly philanthropic, that would take investment and support companies that were bringing a therapeutic or a treatment forward for spinal cord injury. So in June this year, we launched the fund in partnership with the Christopher Reeve Foundation, but also 3 additional partners to bring more capital to the problem. And so that was Wings for Life, who you may have heard of as well, Pro Mobilia, who are a Swedish foundation, and the Shepherd Center in Atlanta in the US. So that's 5 founding partners for SCI Ventures. And within that fund already, there are 4 investments. We have 4 companies. 1 is Onward Medical, 2 is Axonis Therapeutics, 3 is Sanya Therapeutics, and 4 is Augmental. So we've already started making investments, and we're looking to make some more, hopefully very soon. And the goal is really to get these companies through to clinical trials and ultimately delivering them to the clinic for our community.
Thank you. Our supporters might be aware and might have seen some stories in the news this year about neuromodulation, electrical stimulation. How can those therapies help improve function and quality of life for people with a spinal cord injury, Harvey, and how soon do we think that could happen?
Yeah, so obviously a lot of news over the last few years has been related to these neurotechnologies, these spinal stimulation or neuromodulation, which is often used interchangeably. And this is essentially the ability to deliver an electrical field in different ways and parameters to the spinal cord or to the brain, to either enhance function or sometimes in some cases to reveal some hidden function. And we've seen all sorts of different outcome measures. So that's the beauty of it. And also the complexity of it is that no 2 spinal cord injuries are the same. And unsurprisingly, we also see that the outcomes are also very variable. So we're seeing a whole range of motor changes in lower extremity and upper extremity. We're seeing changes in bowel, in bladder. We're seeing changes in blood pressure management, and we're seeing changes in trunk. But it is very variable, and therefore what it means is we need to make sure that, 1, these are really good technologies that allow us to make the most of this variability, and they have the flexibility, but also that we are trying to learn how best to use it with different types of spinal cord injury. So there are obviously a number of different types of devices. Some of them are non-invasive, so they could be in the shape of wearables. Others are implantable and will require surgery to be implanted. And obviously the outcomes associated with those will be different from person to person.
Cynthia, we're funding some neuromodulation projects. That's right, isn't it? Could you just talk a little bit about what's in the pipeline there?
Thanks, Louisa. Yeah, we're keeping up to date with everything, and we are funding some neuromodulation projects. And so currently at Spinal Research, we're co-funding a 3-year neuromodulation project. It's actually the UK's first implantable epidural stimulation trial. And it's a 3-year trial called the IMPRESS trial, IMPRESS, which stands for the Implantable Improving Pelvic Rehabilitation Using Epidural Stimulation After Spinal Cord Injury. So we're co-funding this with the Brain Research UK. And this project is going to be based at Stanmore at the London Spinal Injury Centre. And it is being led by doctors Lindsay Dufell and David Baxter. So this project aims to investigate the effects of epidural or spinal stimulation as a way to improve bladder and bowel function in individuals with spinal cord injury. And we are actually having support with the funds from the Injured Jockey Funds as well, which is very useful to us. And the trial will involve the recruitment and implantation, as Harvey mentioned, implantation of 18 participants with clinical and home-based trial training programs. And I believe that the recruitment for this trial is currently still open. And apart from this trial, which it is an implantable neuromodulation trial, which targets bowel and bladder function. We are also having two other neuromodulation projects, which are currently in flight, but these are non-invasive or wearable, as Harvey mentioned. And one of them is based in Birmingham, University of Birmingham, targeting the cardiovascular function, and the other one is in Canada, which is also non-invasive, and this one targets mostly the bladder, bowel, and sexual function. We also have other neuromodulation projects that we have funded recently, and they have actually wrapped up, and we are currently waiting for the publication of results, which is quite exciting time as well. So just roughly, we have projects which we funded from Stanmore Neurokinex, Glasgow, Leeds as well. So hopefully our supporters will keep an eye out over the next few months, and we'll have more news about the outcomes in our monthly newsletters and maybe in our social media posts as well. So it'd be quite interesting to keep an eye out on these.
Great, thank you. It's been really great to hear about what we've been achieving recently. Looking forward to next year, Cynthia, could you talk a little bit about things that are coming up, if there are any projects that are completing or anything that we're planning to take into funding?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Louisa. We are, at Spinal Research, we're so excited for what 2025 holds because, first of all, we'll be launching the Catalyst program. So we will be funding bold new ideas from all over around the world, and this program is intended to unlock some of the most brilliant ideas that are, often stuck in scientists, engineers, clinicians' mind, but with nowhere to go. So we really hope that this program will, attract talents from various other disciplines as well, such as physics, computer science, and material science, for example. And this in turn will help us fulfill our purpose, strategy, and mission at Spinal Research as we aim to fund and accelerate the most promising lines of research, as well as encouraging collaborations between world-renowned scientific institutions from all over the world. So we are planning to launching this program hopefully early 2025. So to our supporters, do look out for updates. In our monthly newsletters, it'd be quite interesting to follow on with this, and we're very excited about this as well at Spinal Research. And we have also decided to partner up with, continue our partnership with the Rees Foundation. And we've done so in a $1 million program to fund preclinical research applications on paralysis caused by traumatic spinal cord injury in the support of the mission of both organizations. So the request for applications have recently opened, and we actually held an informative webinar recently to clarify and explain the goal of the request for applications and also to answer the applicant questions. So Spinal Research and Christopher and Dana Reeves Foundation, we encourage industry and academic partnerships for necessary drug development expertise. So lead investigators from academic and private companies from basically any countries are eligible to enter. And this cements our strategy to funding only the best science out there. And by reaching out globally, we actually have the chance to do that. Also, we will have our annual PhD studentship, and we have awarded over 50 PhD studentships over the last 2 decades. And I think these, awards is invaluable to equip, these young, talented scientists, for future and doing their part in building, further capacity in curing paralysis. So we are actually currently funding 5 PhD students, and we will be, awarding another PhD student supervisor shortly, with an award to fund a budding PhD student to begin in the autumn of 2025. So this year, we funded two new PhD students who started in autumn 2025. So one of them is from King's College and the other is from the University of Birmingham. So both focusing on projects which look to improve breathing functions following spinal cord injury. Also in 2025, we'll be opening another round of studentship applications. So it's all exciting, in the research portfolio for the next year. I'm really excited as well.
Great, thank you. Me too. Brilliant. So Harvey, the vision then as Chief Vision Officer, what are we looking forward to as well in 2025?
Yeah, a big question. I mean, just to add to Cynthia's really good summary was that for SCI Ventures, we also expect to make more investments in 2025, and so look out for those. We also are expecting to hear about Onward Medical, which is one of the companies in our SCI Ventures portfolio, to announce FDA approval, so US FDA, that's the regulator in the US, approval of their first product, the ARC-X, which is the non-invasive spinal stimulator. So we're expecting to hear from that really soon, and I think that will make a lot of news. And obviously off the back of that, regulators around the world will also have to get this approved so that we can start to see that being adopted and implemented in the clinic. So I think that will be quite exciting for us. But beyond that, we've really got to start thinking about how we can make sure these first generation therapeutics are they have a reliable path to the clinic, and so we have to make sure that those are being supported through those clinical stages and through the regulators. So that's really important. And then in parallel to that, making sure that the next generation of therapeutics and the pipeline of those is still really strong and promising, and that we can see those move through the stages as well. And then probably that's a piece that's hot on everyone's lips is that we're into this technological era now, and we want to make sure that we can apply all of these great technological advances we're seeing around the world to help us accelerate the research and development processes. So I would say those are probably the most important focus areas for us, not only in 25, but also beyond.
Great. Thank you both very much. We're going to open up to questions now. So as I said, you should be able to see underneath a button that says Q&A and question mark. So if you go into that and add in any questions, we'll get to as many of those as we can. But it'd be great to start off. We've had a question come in that was asking about where we are in terms of the journey towards curing paralysis, and obviously, hope is so important, but also is understanding possibly what that roadmap looks like and what the timelines might look like. Have you got any thoughts on that, Harvey?
Yeah, it's always a difficult question to talk about, timelines, but in terms of where we are today, we are essentially standing on the cusp of first generation treatments. And what do I mean by first generation treatments? These are things like the spinal stimulation, like the brain control interfaces, and these plasticity enhancing drugs, or plasticity meaning the central nervous system's ability to rewire, and by providing drugs that can do that. So I think we're there and so some of these therapies are in clinic or in clinical trial or approaching clinical trial. I would describe those as first generation treatments. And so what we also know is that those are not the final form of the cure that we all hope for in the future, which is a full repair. And I think that it's widely accepted that there is still much scientific work and research and development to do to fully regenerate the spinal cord. And so that is really important. How long that will take, really depends on one, funding, two, talent, and making sure that we've got the brightest minds working in this space. And three, it's going to come down to complexity. But I think what we can say, maybe that we couldn't say in the past, is that we are in this era of technology that is going to hopefully help us speed up some of the processes and do more with a lot less. And therefore, I would class that as an era of renewed hope, I would say.
Right, thank you. You touched a little bit on regeneration then. We did have a couple of questions come in quite specifically about the availability of NVG-291, and then also just any other thoughts that we've got about developments in the field of spinal cord regeneration specifically.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so NV291, for those that don't know the codes, is a drug that's being trialed at the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab in Chicago. It's a company that spun out of Case Western, Jerry Silver's lab many years ago, and is currently in a phase 2 trial. So what we know is that the trial is looking at both subacute, so that's days and weeks after injury, and also a chronic cohort of subjects. The clinical trial is ongoing, so obviously we have no visibility of what's happening there. We will see what the outcomes of that are and whether that will move into the next phase. And the next phase, if the current phase is successful, will likely roll out to more centers around the world in the future. But at the moment, we don't have any more visibility on that than that. The second part of the question was about regeneration and other lines. So we are still, I would say, trying to understand what can make adult neurons that have been injured grow into the lesion and out of the lesion and to their targets. But at the same time, there are a number of what we call first generation therapeutics that are able to adapt the lesion so that it makes it a bit more growth permissible for those injured neurons. And so there are a number of approaches. In terms of what's in clinical trial at the moment, it would really only be the NVG-291. There was an AXA 204 study, which was run by a company called ReNetX, which completed, which was for a regenerative therapy. The outcomes were not what they'd hoped. And at the moment, they're reviewing those to decide on what the next steps are going to be before proceeding. Beyond that, everything else is really still at the preclinical stages and trying to make a case for being effective enough to take forward to a clinical trial. It's important that we don't go to clinical trials with things that don't show enough preclinical evidence. Otherwise, we'd be wasting a lot of money, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
I can see a question that came up.
Yeah, we've had, I'll grab this one then.
Yeah.
So we've had a question come in from Danny who's attending, which obviously I think is a really relevant question for anyone who does have an injury but is interested in taking part in a trial, asking if you're still under a neurosurgeon, is it better to go through them for advice before applying to be part of a trial?
Yeah, I mean, I always recommend talking to your consultants about participating in clinical trials. And obviously they will provide advice on that. But ultimately, if you do apply to a clinical trial, you will be screened by experts appropriately, and you will be informed with patient information sheets, and everything will have gone through an ethics process and stuff. So it really is up to you. Obviously, it's always good for your consultant to know that you're considering participating in a trial, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. We've had a couple of specific questions come in, thank you, Kareem, around two projects that I think have been in flight for a little while. One is red light therapy in Birmingham, and the other is KCL 286, which I believe is activity at King's College.
Another code, yeah. So KCL 286, very quickly, The latest we know from that is that a safety study has been done with this oral drug, um, and has shown to be safe. And the group at King's College right now are trying to put together a plan to go forward with what we call a phase 2A with people with spinal cord injury. They're looking to apply that in the acute stages of the injury, so early hours after injury at the moment, but they do believe that it might have some application in chronic injury, although that data needs to be yet published. So that's what we know of KCL 2A6. In terms of the red light therapy, I know a little bit less about that, I would say, but I do know that that group has still yet to develop a device that would be practical for human application. So whilst it has shown some useful and interesting results in preclinical stages, there is a long way to go for them to develop a device and have that implemented. Hopefully that helps.
We had a question submitted ahead of time, which was around our thoughts on implants. Obviously, we are involved in trials using implants, but then, there's things in the news all the time, like stuff coming out of Neuralink, the recent deep brain stimulation stuff that's been happening in Switzerland. What do we have thoughts on all of that stuff?
So implantables are here to stay. I think we're still in the early stages of it being kind of a widely accepted both by general public and by the clinical community. So we still have some way to go for it to really kind of get into the hearts and minds of people, but they are here. So as you mentioned, the Neuralink gets a lot of news, but there are a number of other companies that are also looking to implant devices both into the brain and into the spinal cord or close to the spinal cord, that will provide a therapeutic effect or will act as a prosthetic of some kind. So it is here to stay. There are big considerations that people need to make when considering implants. And obviously all of those should be part of any discussion and any information packs that would come with the opportunity. You can probably imagine that a surgery is not trivial, and that you would also have to be provided ongoing support of any technology that is implanted into your body. So there's a lot of considerations, but at the same time, it seems like we're heading in this direction that this is going to become more and more common over time, not just in spinal cord injury, but across many conditions.
Thank you. We do still have time for more questions, so if anyone does have anything that they wanted to pop into the box, please do, don't be shy. As if by magic, there's one that came in. Yeah, so it was just a question asking you to expand a little bit on the red light therapy, just for those on the call that aren't familiar with what it is.
Yeah, so again, this is, as I mentioned, I'm less familiar with this than some of the other things, but obviously a group at Birmingham University is showing that by providing some red light therapy to the spinal cord in the early hours of a spinal cord injury, that it can have lots of positive effects on inflammatory processes that contribute to the secondary injury that happens after a spinal cord injury. But obviously that is easier to do in experimental conditions with in preclinic than it is in a clinical setting. So hopefully that helps answer some of those questions.
Thank you. Obviously something that is talked about as well a lot is AI. And I know in the team already from a fundraising point of view, we're using AI sometimes to work with data to help us develop copy if we're producing something to send out to supporters. There's all kinds of places that it's touching our day-to-day work already. Do you see that AI is going to give us opportunities to potentially accelerate some of the research pathways?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and I think it's on the lips of everyone at the moment. So in short, do we think that AI, and I'll also include robotics in this as well, in that there's a level of automation. AI and robotics will significantly impact research and development. And I think that goes for spinal cord injury and every other field of research. I think that's a given. Obviously, the big opportunities are going to be able to it being capable of operating on massive data sets like imaging data sets and genomic data sets and motion capture and electrophysiological data to be able to discover faster, more precisely, at greater depth. And yeah, I think it's going to be a real game changer for all fields, including spinal cord injury. And I think some of the labs around the world, you know, it's not they're starting now. They've been working on this for a while now. You know, there are a number of labs around the world that are using some really advanced technological techniques to look at imaging data, to look at genomic data, to look at electrophysiological data. And there are even some groups that are now thinking about how they're going to automate their labs and apply robotics in it to take away some of the kind of, I guess, the more routine lab activities and then focus more on the hardcore scientific research that they should be doing. And there's also an additional opportunity. So tech founder supported deep tech companies, Google DeepMind's one example, but there are many. They will bring their resources and expertise to this space as well. So they will prove to be big partners for the field in the future.
Okay, thank you. We've had another question come in around the NVG-291, so the nerve regeneration therapies.
Yeah.
Just an opinion on, the efficacy of that when we're looking at chronic post-injury cases.
Sure. So obviously the second arm of the trial does include chronic injuries, whether that's a 1 year, whether that's a 10-year, it doesn't really make a difference. To the adult neuron is either acute or chronic. So I think from that perspective, it will be a wait and see what happens with the outcomes of this trial. So there's not much more we can say on that, really, to be honest.
Okay. Perhaps Danny, thank you. Another comment coming from Danny around a particular situation. Just, I suppose the message here around, different cases, different instances of different things that can damage a spinal cord or that, could lead to paralysis or loss of function. I think, the key message with that is definitely to, yes, keep talking to your neurosurgeon and keep an eye out on our research, really, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, talking to your whether it be your surgeon, whether it be a neurologist, or neurologist consultant or rehabilitation consultant, a healthy dialogue with them is always important. Remember, they're really busy people, so if you have research that's of interest, take it to them. Sometimes it sparks them to go off and have a look into it for their patients. So, bear that in mind as well. But no, I think keeping an ongoing dialogue with them is really important. If they have further questions that they feel they can't answer, and that we can help broker a conversation with an expert, then obviously feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah, right. We've had a question come in. Obviously, you touched on robotics and exoskeletons a bit a second ago. Just do you have any thoughts about whether they're worth looking into for an incomplete SCI patient?
So exoskeletons are now being used in so many rehab settings already. There are many models out there. And I would say that new models are being released on almost like an annual basis with slightly different purposes. I think if you have a partial paralysis or an incomplete injury, as otherwise people would describe it, then of course activity rehabilitation is an opportunity for you to further enhance function or to train that activity, a residual activity that you have. So whether it's an exoskeleton or whether it's some other type of rehabilitation setting that is appropriately loading the sensory systems, is probably a good thing. I would say. Where the exoskeletons will go in the future, we'll have to see what kind of investment goes into them and ultimately which ones that are being adopted by the wider clinical community.
Great, thank you. Jonathan's asked a question that's what's the message for a 60-year-old who's lived with spinal cord injury for 40 years?
Yeah, well, so I mean, one is well done, because it can be a difficult path to keep on top of your health for such an amazingly long time. I think obviously everything we invest in is for the chronic spinal cord injury population, really. I know we do fund some acute and subacute stuff with other partners, but our core funding and our core focus is on the chronic spinal cord. And so therefore, those adult neurons that are struggling to rewire or to regenerate, obviously our focus is on changing that. Obviously, if you're in your later years, let's say, then obviously you might be looking at the first generation therapeutics as the opportunity, and what will those result in? Well, they're certainly not going to be a cure, but they could be an improvements in quality of life, whether that be bowel related, bladder related, blood pressure related. It could be an improvement in pinch and grip, or it could be that if you have partial paralysis, an improvement in gait or ability to stand. So it really depends on your abilities and what these first generation therapeutics could offer you.
Thank you. George has asked a question around increasing carbon dioxide in the blood, and whether any more work has been done on that.
It's way out of my wheelhouse. We can certainly introduce you to some groups that specialize in this area. So if you look up the Mitchell group in Florida, or even here in the UK, Warren's group, they're focusing on respiratory function, and they'd be in a better place to answer that question.
I mean, you know most things about most things, don't you? But maybe not everything always.
Certainly not. Yeah.
Thank you. So anyone got any more questions? We've still got a little bit more time. We were planning to wrap up at 7, so if anyone did have anything more that they wanted to ask, please do go ahead. We'll give it a minute. I think something that's really exciting from my perspective and for the fundraising team is, you know, all of this brilliant work that's been happening and the breakthroughs that are coming. And obviously, Harvey, you know, you talked specifically about that first generation treatment that's looking to get FDA approval. So we will actually have a therapeutic on the market that is about delivering function recovery, and how exciting that is. I think, a message, something that I've really come to understand in my time at the organisation is, yes, science does move slowly, but the key thing we need is the funds to be able to invest in that science. And, obviously I talked a bit already about the brilliant work that our supporters are doing, but, I think we would always say that we just need more support. The science is moving, there's therapeutics coming, but we really need the money to make sure that they develop fully and end up in people's hands, improving their lives. I think that's really key, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, the key accelerator is funding. So that is really important.
Yeah. We've had a question coming in around building an SCI resource online. So not
Yeah.
specifically about research, but potentially, yeah, having an online community perhaps.
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think foundations in the past have dabbled in this and to different degrees of success. I think we, especially if today in 2024, I think all of our online habits and tools of choice are slightly different. So I think there's a bit of a let's say um, there's almost some dust to settle, I would say, on some of the tech platforms. But I think now that we're in this world of large language models and these GPTs, the chat GPTs and the like, the ability to build resources that will be able to take care of, I guess, questions where the literature or the content is available is certainly possible to do, and we're keeping an eye on that. We, where appropriate, will partner with other charities and foundations to do so.
Thank you. We've had a question come in, I guess it's about us and about our experience and background, which, I mean, I don't mind starting off with the answer to that question. So I've been working in the charity sector for about 17 or 18 years, predominantly in fundraising. So I've worked on a lot of really quite successful, I guess, fundraising campaigns. I worked for Comic Relief for a few years. That was my most recent job before joining Spinal Research nearly 3 years ago. So yeah, I brought a lot of fundraising and brand and kind of marketing experience to the role. And I also kind of have a background in working in the commercial sector, which has, I think, really helped me from the perspective of, building the team, building the culture, looking across I guess, the housekeeping as well of running an organisation. So that's my background. Cynthia, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself too?
Hi. So, my background, I did an undergraduate in pharmaceutical science, and then I followed that on with a PhD in cardiovascular pharmacology and physiology before moving to Oxford to do 2 years of postdoctoral research, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And then I moved on to out of the lab, but I still really wanted to be in the field of science education and because these are my passion. And so I moved on to working for the British Pharmacological Society. And then I moved on to working for another charitable organization, still in the field of science. And then now I'm with the Spinal Research as a research portfolio manager, which I'm thoroughly enjoying. I just love being in the field of science and just learning more each day. And yeah, that's basically. Thank you.
And Harvey?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think I already mentioned at the start. I have a spinal cord injury. I was injured 15 years ago, in 2009. The bulk of my career has been in the city, working in technology. So my background is very tech focused, and I really got into supporting spinal research after my injury, and as nerds do, really try to learn as much as we can about the field, but also how does science become medicine, and that was really important. And there are so many parallels now with tech and the way that tech has built products that is now starting to follow suit in the world of medicine. So that's my area of focus. Of course, also by being in the city, it means that having access to networks that allow us to do things like SCI Ventures, which hopefully are game changers for our field.
Right, thank you. Another question come in around the NVG 291, which I suppose is interesting. It's kind of probably related to what you just said about understanding how science becomes medicine effectively. What the pathway might be to getting a therapeutic like that
Yeah,
in the
I mean,
market in the UK.
yeah. I mean, look, obviously we can talk in hypothetical.
General terms,
So
yeah.
if NVG 291 it completes the trial and shows a positive signal. And so it will be the company NerveGen and its shareholders that will decide, along with the regulators, will decide on whether there's a positive signal. Then they will make a decision to move to phase 3. And the phase 3 will have to then expand the clinical trial to other sites. And it's at that point, centres in the UK can put their hands up and say, we'd like to be involved. So through our Spark network, which we mentioned, I think Cynthia mentioned earlier, that network of centres within Spark network will put their hands up and say, we'd love to be part of a phase 3 clinical trial. But until that happens, we don't know. But certainly we're ready on hand to put our hands up and want to be included. I do know a little bit about the trial in that it's the first trial that's ever been conducted that's using electrophysiology, so electrical signals, as a primary outcome. So it's looking at whether electrical signals are changing as a result of this application of this drug. Now, that the expertise to do that kind of thing is not naturally available at all other centres. So they will have to plan as part of phase 3 rollout is to figure out how to either, if they're going to carry on using that primary outcome measure, to roll that out to other centres as well. So it's a wait and see. Certainly UK are ready to put their hands up when an appropriate therapy comes along for clinical trial.
Great, thank you. There's a comment that's come in from John following Jonathan's question around, aging and having a spinal cord injury for a really long time. I think, there's probably other people on the call as well that would second that comment, John, just about how difficult that can be. And I guess, obviously, Harvey, to your point around, the focus that we have on funding work that will help people with a chronic injury.
So whilst aging with spinal cord injury isn't kind of a core focus of our mission, there are lots of groups that are focusing in this space. So they're looking at all sorts of different types of health factors, risk factors that come with living with spinal cord injury for a long time. And so certainly our portfolio is not the only answer to spinal cord injury. There are other groups that are working on this. Certainly, if you want to learn more about that, I think there's some good resources for aging with spinal cord injury that have been published recently, and certainly we can help if you can't find those. But of course, things like keeping fit, keeping physically active help. But equally, we cannot fight off age as a species at this point in time. So,
and I mean, indeed, there's an increase in spinal cord injuries coming because of degenerative age-related conditions as well, aren't there? Part of the kind of aging population that we're seeing in the West.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, there are other lines of science that will be focusing on these areas so that we can live better with spinal cord injury. But at the same time, of course, things like spinal stimulation, if they're able to enhance or reveal hidden functions, those functions could make things easier for you. It could make a transfer easier. It could make using the bathroom easier. It could be a number of things which also contribute to the wear and tear or the non-wear and tear of everyday life. So, there's a lot of hope in that space, but totally empathize with Jonathan there. I'm 15 years in and I'm feeling it, so I understand.
Okay. I think we can wrap things up there. No more questions have come in the last couple of minutes. Thank you so much, you guys. It's been really lovely to talk with you. I really hope as well for those who've joined us that this has been helpful and useful. We will be sharing this on our YouTube channel as well. So if you do want to go and have a look for that or share this or, re-listen to anything, or if there's, an email address or any particular point that you wanted to recap on, you can do that. As I said as well, if you email us in at info@spinal-research.org, if you've got more specific questions, then we'll do everything we can to answer that. I wanted again to say thank you. We're at such an exciting time in the field of research into curing paralysis, and we've got real momentum. I think certainly we're very excited here at the team. We've got a really strong team now. We've done some fantastic rebuilding and really done some great change internally as well over the last couple of years. So things feel really kind of poised for success and for change. And I think just that message of hope that we would want to share with all of you is so important. And we're very hopeful and optimistic and excited here at Spinal Research. And as I said, so incredibly grateful for your support, because we couldn't do the things we've been talking about tonight without you. So thank you very much. As I said, please do stay in touch with us. We'll be doing more sessions like this over the course of next year as well. So keep an eye out for emails letting you know about that. And it's a little bit early to be saying this perhaps, but have a wonderful Christmas and a really happy new year. And we hope we'll see some of you again in 2025. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.